Alrighty, I think we are finally live. I wanted to apologize for everybody, to everybody for being late. This is a new realm for all of us, live streaming. So I apologize for that delay. So a quick introduction: I am Arman Hezarkhani. Some of you might have seen me or my videos on YouTube. I've been working with the DSC team for a bit less than a year now, but I've worked with Google Cloud before that, and I've done a lot of teaching all over. I'm an alumni of Carnegie Mellon University, so if there are any CMU DSC students here, I'd love to hear from you in the chat, and I'd love to hear from everybody. I know we have people from all around the world, as we're all dealing with this global crisis right now, so I hope that everybody's doing okay, and I hope that everyone's safe and healthy and happy and working on their projects. So like we said, today we're going to be answering some questions that you may have. So I want to start by talking a little bit about project design. And then I wanted to dive into, okay, sorry. I'm getting used to looking at the comments and speaking. But so I wanted to start by talking a little bit about project design and some of the ideas that we discuss in our videos. Then I have some questions that we've collected from before the session that I'm going to go through, just a few. And the entire time, I hope that you will all be coming up with questions and posting questions in the live chat, and I'm going to look through those and answer them after that, or even during while I'm talking if it's really relevant to what I'm saying. I'll just answer it as I'm going, but afterwards I will also go through and answer what we can. And if I miss anything, we'll follow up with you after the session, the DSC team and I. So once again, sorry for starting 12 minutes late. I wish I could give you that time back, but I'm glad you're all here, and I hope we have a good session. So like I said, I want to start by talking about project design. So the point of DSC, one of the big things that we talk about is connecting practical knowledge and theory, right? So in college, a lot of us learn about theory, and we learn very, very heavily about how things were made, the historical presence, and like why computers are the way that they are. But a lot of times, like at least I felt this way in college, I wish that I had just learned how to build an app, and I wish that I had learned how to build a website, and I wish that I had learned very practical skills. And that's kind of what DSC is there for. And the solution challenge is an opportunity to practice the skills that you're learning, practice those practical skills that you're learning, but also solve problems. And the solution challenge is great for that. And we're almost done. We have 14 more days in the solution challenge. So right now it's time to really buckle up, finish up, and do what we can in these last few weeks to solve those local problems. So I know that a lot of this is difficult now that we're virtual. So if you have some questions about how we can save, like how we can mitigate some of that, how we can still do our research, still do our problem definition and all those things, and still work remotely, if you have some questions about that, we can talk through that as well. And so like I said, I wanted to really quickly just review the project design framework that we've been talking about for a while now. So we have those videos on YouTube, so I'd recommend looking at those afterwards. In the description, I think we have a link to the Solution Challenge website. We have a bunch of resources on there, including those videos, so I'd look through those again. But so the first step is define the problem, right? So the example that I use is study space. Like when I'm studying on campus, when I was a college student, I was studying on campus or working on a project on campus, it was always very, very difficult to find a place to study. Like it was super crowded. And if it wasn't crowded, it was often loud or something like that. And so that was really difficult. So let's try to solve a problem, or let's try to solve that problem. The first step is to really define the problem down to its core. So finding study space is not really that good of a problem. That can be anything. The true problem can be anything from your campus just doesn't have enough space with good internet access, or your campus doesn't have enough space that people know about. Maybe it's like a discovery thing. The third option is maybe it's that there is a lot of space, but there are different peaks in when the spaces are more or less popular. And like really people just need to understand how and when these different places are popular and when they're crowded and when they're not. So that's the first thing. So let's choose one of those. So let's go with the third one. That was the problem on my campus, is that there was a lot of space, but it was difficult to know when different spaces were going to be popular. So the next step is to identify the solution. So when we're identifying the solution, the idea is that we have the problem. It's that people don't know the availability on the campus at that time, right? So the solution might be to generate real-time data of when the library is open, or how many people are in the library, how many people are in this classroom or that classroom. And so maybe our solution is that we need to generate this data somehow, right, and share it somehow. So that's a pretty good solution. But how are we going to generate that data? How are we going to display the data, right? You could generate the data by setting up sensors in the library that do heat detection, or maybe they're using a machine learning algorithm like YOLO, which is you only look once, and that could help you count the number of people in the room, right? So we could do something like that. So you first need to break down the problem and see how you're going to solve each one of these. So let's say we're going to use the YOLO algorithm, right? We could also do reporting, where people in the library report how many other people are there, kind of like Google Maps does, right? But let's say we're going to use a machine learning algorithm for that. And then we do something along the lines of like, how can we display that data to people, right? This could be in the form of an app. This can be in the form of a web application. But let's say that we decide that, like on my campus, most people, when they were studying or going to find somewhere to study, they always had their phone out. So I think that a mobile application would make the most sense. So right now, in order to design the solution or define the solution, we have determined that we're going to collect data through the you can collect data through the machine learning algorithm. So we need to set up cameras. And then the application, the mobile application, is going to be how people can find different places on their campus. The step after that is to design that application, right? So that's when we talk about doing user research and doing some user studies to understand what people want. I see we're changing the color on the video. I love it. But so that's when we could do some research to see what people want this app to look like, where the buttons can be placed, what are good colors and things like that we can use. And then the last step is to write code. And oftentimes people don't do this. Oftentimes people will do something along the lines of like they'll start coding, because a lot of us are engineers and we just like building stuff. But it's often way better to save that for the end, and you will save a lot of time and energy if you do that. So that is kind of the framework that we use. And so if you have questions about that, post them in the chat. I'm gonna look through the chat right now. I see we have a bunch of questions. So first I'm gonna go through some of the questions that we had before. There's only 2 of them that I wanted to talk about. So the first one is teams. So a lot of people are talking about like how big are the teams and how can we work virtually. So teams of 4 is the max size for each submission. And then how can you communicate virtually? I'm not just saying this because it's Google, whatever, but really G Suite tools are incredibly helpful for working virtually. So if you have Google Hangouts or Google Hangouts chat, you can chat with each other. I would always have a Google Doc to talk about the design, Google Calendar for meetings. There's also Slack and Discord for chat if you prefer something like that. And then there's code. I see Mehmet has a question about code, GitHub. Like using something like GitHub or Bitbucket is really good for sharing code, of course. And if people want some resources for that, we can share that. So let's jump into Mehmet's question. So can we share code from a private repository? Is there a group of emails that we can add to the repository to hand off projects without making them publicly listed on GitHub, at least during this stage? That's a great question. So basically, so what Mehmet's getting at is, okay, so when you're submitting the code, right? I'm gonna move my camera so you can see me. So for the submissions, we ask that you're submitting in a Git repository. So in something like GitHub or Bitbucket. Mehmet's question is, how can I share that with you but not make it public, right? Because maybe you want your code to be private to your team. So that's something that I don't think we have a process for yet, but we will figure that out. I think that your solution of something like a private repository that, so there's really two options. We can either do like you build a private repository and share one of us on it, or we could build those for you and kind of copy it. I know GitHub has some tools for that. So I'm going to write that down right now. Private Git sharing. So I'm going to look into that afterwards, and this will be updated on the website once we figure that out. So yeah, I appreciate you asking that question. That'll help a lot of people out. And then, okay, scrolling through the other questions. So I'm not sure. So of all colleges having active DSCs in India, how many are tier 3 colleges? I'm not sure. I know that Komal is on the call. So Komal, if you have that data, that would be really helpful. But I'm not sure. We don't, there's no like when it comes to schools all over the world, it's not like we're just going to elite schools with DSC. DSC is everywhere. DSC is at the top of the top tier 1 schools all around the world, but it really is everybody that can access DSC. And so I don't know the exact number, but it really is a diverse program, and we're really, really proud of that. Deepak, love to India as well. I see you're saying love from India, so right back at you. I appreciate that. Out of all the colleges in India having active DSC, how many participated in this year's solution challenge? So also, I don't have that data off the top of my head. Let's see if we, yeah, so I don't have that data right now, but we can follow up with you, Lavish. Do you think that the aim of DSC program is fulfilled in India? So the aim of the DSC program, I'm not going to speak specifically to India, but I think it's really a global goal of, like I said in the beginning, connecting DSC or connecting that theoretical knowledge that students have and students get in university, and connecting that theory to practice and trying to teach practical knowledge, trying to get experience with practical knowledge and skills. And so I think that we're always trying to grow and get better, but I think that a lot of students are really enjoying the experience and building really, really cool projects. Okay, so now let's talk about, can a student register with 2 teams? He has written code for 2 teams participating in the solution challenge. So this should be in the terms of service. I'm not sure on the exact ruling. It seems like there's a lot of rule questions, but the terms of service should have the answers to most of these questions. But I can follow up with you afterwards to answer this question. So is the demonstration video our main point of contact with judges? Should we try to cram points into that video, for example, a landing page? And how much beyond 120 seconds can we go with the video? This is a great question. So this is a question that we're actually getting a lot, like, oh, my video is 2 minutes and 30 seconds. My video is, however, like longer than that. So if when we're judging these, there's a lot of videos that we're going to be watching. And even if you submit a 10-minute video, like let's say, let's think of like a tool like LinkedIn, okay? Let's say I was trying to demo LinkedIn. I could spend a week demoing LinkedIn features probably, right? There's like a bunch of little buttons. There's LinkedIn Premium. There's the news feed and all these things. You can even live stream on LinkedIn, right? But there are really like 2 minutes probably of the most important points, right? So what we're asking for those 2 minutes is not a comprehensive, like what is every single part of this website or this tool. So that's not what we're looking for. We're not looking for every single thing. We're looking for you to tell us what is the most important part of your project. What is the coolest part? What is the part that's providing the most value to your users, right? The name of the challenge is Solution Challenge. So in 2 minutes, what is that solution? So really, like, we're asking everyone to keep the videos under 2 minutes, just so that it's fair to everybody and so that we can really watch everybody's videos and get that answer. But that is a great question. So, okay, let's see, what else? Is the maximum number of projects per team still 1 project? Yeah, so that's also that's similar to the other question, like can one user or can one developer be on two different teams? I'm not sure about that question. It should be somewhere in the terms of service, but we'll get back to you afterwards. Or if I know some of the DSC team is online, if they know the answer and they could just throw it in the comments, that'd be helpful as well. So yeah, what else? Things are doing. Okay. Okay, so Komal just said one project per team. So yeah, so one project per team, that's the maximum. Let's see, any other questions? What are people asking? This is Komal, our global program manager. Okay, oh, Mehmet, thanks so much. Solving GitHub sharing will help us a lot. Adding a group of emails as collaborators to ensure repository is delivered would be amazing. Yeah, so that is, I know GitHub has some new tools. They actually built specifically for education. They've been doing a lot of cool work within the ed space. And I think that we could potentially use some of that here. So we'll see what we can do there, and we'll follow up and we'll update the website with that. But I hear you. I think like sharing the private code is definitely something that that would be helpful. So yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up. Okay, the deadline is April 30th. Yeah, so the deadline has been updated on the website. The deadline is April 30th. Yeah, so we moved that back because we figured that people are going through a lot right now. We're not sure of the situation internationally, right? Like every region is different, every country, every city is different. And so we just want to give people time to focus on themselves. And if that means 30 more days working on the project, that's totally fine with us. So that's why we extended the deadline. You can see the communication that we put out, the email that we sent out on the DSC website. So yeah, the link's spinning at the bottom here. If you go right to that link, you can see the due date, all that stuff. So will we receive Google Venture support if we want our solution to impact globally? That is not something we have set up right now. We're not connected with the Google Ventures team at the moment. So that's not something that that we have set up right now. So okay, Komal said, so if we could put up Komal's solution answer, she answered in there. I know some other people are joining. Okay, very good. Okay, cool. Yeah, so if other people have questions, so one thing I wanted to see if we could do is if people have, if people want answers for like feedback on their project design or their idea, if they want to kind of walk through something, if they want to post their idea and maybe a little bit about their project, that like we can do that live. If you have other questions about project design, maybe some of the more specific questions too, just continue to post in there. That'd be, yeah, whatever questions you have, we are here to answer. Yeah. So let's see, anything else coming up? Okay. And also, like if you have, so I'm a software engineer by trade. So if you have questions about different tools that you could use for different solutions, that's also something that we can, facilitate. So yeah, just let us know what questions you have. I'm also going to pull up Parthian and see if there are any questions on there that we can answer. Let's see. Okay, so we got a question. We are using Firebase in our Flutter project. How can we submit the project? Right, so how can you submit a project with Flutter and Firebase? So really, when we're talking about submission, we're talking about the video and the source code. Like there's all those parts on the submission form. You can take a look at it. But as for the video, I'd recommend just taking, like, if since it's Flutter, it's probably like a mobile app, right? So there are a bunch of apps that you can use to record the screen. So you could do that. If you want to show somebody actually using the app, then then what you could do is have one person maybe hold a smartphone and recording that person using it, and then that person showing off the tools. Those are the two kind of versions that I've seen well, like a person in real life, kind of Steve Jobs-esque, right? Kind of standing there like, hey, this is our new app. So that's one option. The second option is, again, that screen share. As for the code, so since you're writing Flutter, you're writing Dart code, so you can submit that source code directly. We're not going to see your database. We're not going to see the data that you have live, but that's totally fine. We really want to just see how you're building it, what tools you're using. The source code will help us do that. So yeah, that's how you could submit those, that code. Are we still eligible for the solution challenge if, aside from using Google, we're also using other technologies? So we're not closing off, like, whether, like, basically we're not closing off you using other tools. So that's that, like, the rules are in the terms of service. We're encouraging everybody to use Google tools because that's what we have the bandwidth to support. Like, we can help everybody learn Google tools. I've used many of Google's tools. So no, we're not, it's not like if you use someone else, you're automatically disqualified. That's not the case by any means. We just want everybody to learn and get practice with practical skills. And we just require that one of those is Google, or at least one of those is Google technology. Okay, so our project is designed to work with Kubernetes, but due to cost it brings during development, we are compatible, but not actively hooked to GKE at the moment. Yeah, so that is a great question. Yeah, I would say that counts because, again, the point here is to learn practical skills, and it's to practice those practical skills. And you did that. So you learned Kubernetes, you learned GKE, you deployed to GKE, but the cost, which is something that we all face, right? Like, I was a student a year ago. So I totally understand when I ran out of that free credit, the $300 free credit that Google Cloud shared with me, I ran into a similar issue. With GKE, I know it's a little, there's a lot of I'm pretty sure it charges based on compute time, and so I understand how in development that can be difficult. Oh, sorry, we lost the question there. So yeah, basically, that's totally fine. Is TensorFlow Quantum ready to be used in production builds? Parag, I'm not totally sure about that. I don't want to give you the wrong information. So I would recommend looking at cloud.google.com. They have a bunch of documentation about, like, new releases and products and stuff like that. And if you're interested in getting updates, I'm pretty sure there's a mailing list. Not I'm pretty sure. There is a mailing list that I have signed up for. And they email you, like, new product releases and what products are going into alpha and then beta and then GA. And so you can sign up for that if you're interested in hearing more about when products are being released and when you can use them and things like that. Public usage is really important for the challenge, but with the current state of things, it's a bit difficult to talk to users, especially companies. Will the judging be keeping this in mind? Kelvin, yes. We are aware of the current situation. We are aware that people, like, yes, we're all moving virtually, but that doesn't mean that that life is the same by any means. I mean, you saw I was 12 minutes late to this live stream. I've never been 12 minutes late to a lecture in my life, or any Ask Me Anything session in my life. So things are different, and the same way that you all were okay with me being a little bit late, we're totally going to be taking that into consideration. The times are very challenging, and we understand that for sure. Okay, so given the current situation with COVID-19, how would you advise us to approach organizations or help us test our app? So that goes directly in hand with Kelvin's question. Great questions again, very, very in the time. So how would you recommend approaching organizations? So luckily, a lot of organizations have somewhat of an online presence, right? So a lot of them will have a website, or even if they don't have a website, a lot of them are on, like, Google Maps or other similar internet, like, they have a presence on the internet where you can contact them. And if they don't, oftentimes you can find their phone number in something like a Yellow Pages or like a phone book of some sort. Like, I would recommend trying to, like, think about how you would do this back before the internet was a thing. And imagine you can't go to that place and see how you can do it. Like, do any of your friends know anyone in those organizations that you could maybe ask them, hey, do you have this person's phone number or this person's email? If that information is public, sure, call them up. But we're gonna have to be creative here, right? There's no easy solution. In the video that I posted or that we posted on YouTube, where I talked about interviewing people, I wrote down, or I basically told everybody, hey, hop on a bike and head on over to your local NGOs or your local businesses and talk to them. That's not possible right now, right? So we can't look back on those easy solutions that we had relied on for a long time. We need to get creative. We need to look within our own networks. We need to think about different technologies that maybe some people don't have access to anymore. And so yeah, that's how I would recommend it. Just like call people, email people, rely on the basics for now. Okay. Hi, Arman. Can we have some mentors in AOG category? Currently, there are some GDEs. So AOG, I'm not familiar with the AOG. AOG, can you define AOG for me? It seems, oh, actions on Google. Oh, cool. Okay, actions on Google. Yeah, so can we have some mentors? Yeah, so we'll look into that. Great question. So so it looks like in the community, we don't have a ton of GDEs or mentors in that realm, but we can definitely look into that. Yeah, okay, now everyone's telling me actions on Google. Thank you. Oh, Danny's here. Thank you, Danny. So yeah, so actions on Google, we can look for mentors in that arena for you. That's definitely something that we can help with. Thank you. And yeah, Prajval, also tell me more about your project. I'd love to, everybody tell me about your projects. I'd love to walk through with you. What if someone is working on their project since 2 years, but your TNC is not allowing that? Any solution? That team don't know about this event before. Right, so basically, can we submit a project that was started before the solution challenge? So the goal of the solution challenge, it's a competition, right? So we're looking for people to work on the project during the time in which it was from like January 1st to now April 30th. So really, it should be a project that was started and finished between that timeline. That's really what we're looking for. But thank you. So we have set our actions on Google Interactions using Dialogflow, but I have a hard time figuring out how to share our integration. It is mostly non-code. Is a demonstration video enough? Right. So this is also an interesting question. How can we demo different types of interfaces? So voice interface is something that a lot of people are doing a ton of research into. It's new, right? Like if I want to design an app, so in our design the interface video, I kind of talked about common design patterns. So if you have a button, right, and it's red, that probably means like back or cancel, or like this is a big scary button like delete, right? And we all kind of understand that. And so visual design and user interface design with product and virtual products, we kind of have that figured out. With like things like actions on Google and voice interfaces, it's way different. And I guess what you're running into is how do you like you're running into the same problem in demoing that. I think it's time to get creative. I think that what you're saying, like a demo video, is totally going to be great. Like I think recording someone talking to it could be cool. But you can get creative too, right? Maybe have multiple people in the room having a conversation, and the phone is just another part of that conversation. I would look at some commercials maybe as an example. Like there are a bunch of actions on Google commercials. Other voice interfaces have commercials too. See how they're demonstrating it, and maybe you can borrow some of those same ideas, I guess. Yeah. Okay, so Prajval projects is called Callbeat. It is made to help colleges deploy their own personal companions for students on actions on Google. This companion keeps track of schedules, announcements. Very cool. So it seems like Prajval's project is basically Here, let's show that. Okay, perfect. So it looks like Project project is basically like a on-campus virtual assistant. So I think this is really cool. What my biggest question would be, okay, if this works on your college campus, how can you spread it, right? So how can you build up a database of information such that the interface is the same, right? So I ask this actions on Google tool or this assistant. I ask Callbeat certain questions on this campus, and I get answers that are specific to this campus. How can I scale that to other campuses, right? So, like I went to Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh, but the University of Pitt is right across the street. Is there any way that my assistant could know when I walked over to Pitt, such that now when I'm asking questions, hey, where can I get lunch? It's telling me things about that campus. And same thing with schedules, same thing with announcements. Like we'd have to tap into different databases. So I think that's a really, really cool idea. The next step would be, okay, how can we scale this? How can we share this with other people? So that's really, really cool. Okay, so San, we have to complete the project, but how can we test with other people as we're in lockdown? Right, so this is a question that we're seeing. This is a question that we've seen before as well. How can we test? How can we test? There are actually, so one thing I'd recommend on this too is go to Google with some of your questions. And I'm not saying this to defer it. I'm saying this because there are a lot of design firms out there, like design agencies, who are running into the same issue, and their blogs are packed with ideas of how to run virtual interviews and virtual feedback sessions. So there are ways, if where you're at has the bandwidth to withhold like, or to hold like virtual session, like a Google Hangouts call, you can do an interview over Google Hangouts. And there are tutorials on the internet on how to do that. Basically, it's the same exact thing as you would do in person. You just need to pay way more attention to how that user is reacting. Because when you're in person, you can kind of pick up on body language and like tiny little reactions from people on your application, or on the ideas that you're asking them about, or the feedback that you're asking them for. You can kind of pick up on that stuff. So you want to make sure that their camera is set in the right way. You want to make sure that you can see how they're interacting with your tool and things like that. But once you get all that set up and figured out, you're good to go. You can run feedback sessions in a very similar way that you would in person. Now it gets difficult when you don't have a video interface, right? When you don't have Google Hangouts. Let's say the person you're interviewing only has a phone, or only has access to a phone. Then that's going to be a little different, right? So what I'd recommend in that case is, if there are two people over there, what I would do is have one of them volunteer to act kind of as a remote interviewer. You can kind of have one person stand there on the phone, and then the person that you're interviewing is standing right next to that person. And you're kind of coaching this person on how to interview, and they're giving you the feedback that you're looking for. So that could be one way, right? Another way is, if there's only one person there, which is likely going to be the case, they're probably not going to be two people in the same room, given that we're all supposed to be social distancing. But let's say there's one person, then you could kind of do the same thing and just ask them to talk out loud. So send them a link to your website, or send them a link to download your app. And once they download it, ask them to do the same thing. So when you're asking for feedback, say, hey, try to send a message and walk me through every thought, right? So, okay, now I am trying to send a message. I'm looking for the send button. Okay, is it this plus button? Is it this button that says send? Let me click on the send button. Oh, I just clicked on the send button and it didn't do what I thought, right? And if a user is talking out loud like that to you, you're going to get a lot of the feedback that you were looking for in an in-person setting. Having said that, we know that this is not optimal. We know that this is not perfect, but it can get the job done. So I definitely still recommend trying to test as much as you can, but we understand that it's definitely not optimal. So yeah, so you don't need to cram to find a way to get your actions like Google integration with GitHub. Yeah. And then Deepak, it looks like I missed your question. No, so Deepak, I think your question was, yeah, so it needs to be built within the time frame of the competition. So that I think I did get to your question. Maybe you missed that. Sorry about that. Okay, so your project is based on people who with a disability. So how do you test? So really, that's going to depend on the disability that you're trying to help or facilitate. And so really, it's going to be different on that. Like if a person's hard of hearing or deaf, it might be difficult to do a phone call, right? But if a person maybe is visually impaired, it might be difficult to do a video call. In that case, most people, fortunately, a lot of people are with their families or with close loved ones. What you could do in that case is try to set up an interview. Like I said, set up an interview with the person you're trying to interview and maybe one of their family members or one of their friends. And then kind of like, let's say you're trying to interview me, then me and my brother's upstairs. So my brother and I could sit here next to each other, and you could be on the phone with him. And okay, it's a sign language recognition project, right? So basically, let's say you're trying to interview me, and I'm trying to interact with this application and perform sign language. Then my brother could be here on the phone with you, and you could say, "Hey, like, can you ask Arman to do this thing with the app and tell me what happens?" And ask him to speak out loud and just kind of relay that to me. Or you can have this the phone on speaker and have that person conduct the interview. But I think that would be the best way to move forward. Is kind of see if you can have two people be in the room and coach one of them on some of the interview basics that you would need to do in person. But even still, I think that even with a sign language recognition project, it's definitely possible. But if it proves to be too difficult, post a question on Parthian or something like that, and we can try to help you out a little bit more. But even still, we're totally cognizant of the fact that things are different, the times have changed, and yeah, it's going to be difficult to do this. So, like I said before, we're going to be taking that into account. Right. So Komal said, yeah, maybe written feedback could be good too. I think that's a great idea. Yeah. So maybe send them an email or maybe something like that. Send them a message that has outlined what they should do. Like, hey, try to send a message. Hey, try to reply to a message. Hey, try to do this and that, and then have them just write down written feedback. I think that's a great idea, Komal. Yeah. So I'm going to ask. Okay. So I'm a DS student in Pakistan. We have so we've built an AI-based face recognition attendance system, Flutter application to solve the problem of absenteeism, proxy culture, and corruption in Pakistan. So that's a really interesting idea. Okay, so since we've a major issue of ghost teachers, schools, ghost doctors, and hospitals, and moreover, our M&As are also found marking proxies of the fellow politicians and assemblies attendance register. Okay, so our app, the Barricade. I keep wanting to ask questions, and then I see that you already answered them, so I appreciate that. So our app, the Barricade, is introduced to challenge the status quo of grassroots corruption in Pakistan caused by lack of accountability. Okay, so I think that so the way that I try to give feedback is within that framework that we've discussed. So is the problem defined? Is the solution defined? Is the solution designed, and where's the technology at? So it looks like you're doing, like, the problem is great. I think that absenteeism, when I first read that, I thought you were talking about like in school. Like I know that in the US at least, I'm not sure about the international education realm, but I know that in the US they call it chronic absenteeism, where a huge issue in the K-12 education space is students even showing up to school. There's a lot of home situations that don't help students or set up students for failure, and absenteeism is a huge problem there. But so that's what I thought you were talking about, but it seems like you're talking about so it seems like you're talking about like in politics or in meetings. So my question is, it's a face recognition app. So is this something that you maybe set up in the meeting room, or again, back to those four pillars? The problem sounds great. The solution sounds great, but what is the interface? That would be my question. This Flutter application, what does it look like? How does someone use it? And then the fourth question, or the question after that about technology, is what facial recognition tool are you going to be using? How are you going to collect data about people's faces to train this model? Are you going to train the model, or are you going to use something out of the box? And kind of on a different note, how are you going to get people to use this? Because if someone is not showing up to a meeting or not showing up somewhere, how do you get them to hold themselves accountable? Is it kind of you get other people in the room to do it? I'm just interested more about that. So if you can answer those questions, I'd love to keep talking about it. But it seems like you're off to a great start. So good job. Okay, let's see what else we have. We at DSC are solving our, okay, so Naveen's question, we at DSC are solving our community problem by making a VR solution that will support people conquer stage fear. Right, so this is actually one of the most popular, or I think it's the most common fear or phobia in the world. So this is incredible. This is a great idea. What I think, yeah, I think it's a great idea. My question would be kind of similar to my question to Krinza. So how are you going to, oh, it looks like Krinza answered too, so I'll get to that afterwards. But so Naveen, how is this going to really replicate that feeling of fear of being in front of people? Because so my hypothesis would be that you'd show up and maybe this VR app shows up like a crowd full of people, but how can we actually replicate that same fear or that same anxiety really that comes from public speaking? How can you recreate that and coach people through that? So if you have some ideas on that, we can definitely talk through it. But yeah, that's a great idea. I think, I mean, I've seen a lot of really cool stuff come out of the public speaking realm. Like a lot of people build really cool coaches that help you speak. Like, for example, I just said, right? I've been saying a lot. I say, I say, when I public speak. So I think it'd be good to have a tool to coach me out of that. Right. And it seems like this public speaking thing could be something cool as well. So I'd love to hear more about it too. How much importance is given to the designing part? Right. So first and foremost, we're looking for products or solutions that solve problems, right? That solve local problems. So that's what we're looking for here. And so interface is kind of an interesting thing. So there's a bar where the interface of a tool is really just making it look and feel better, right? So we can all think about tools that are beautiful, right? And they work great and they're really, really good. But we can also think about tools that maybe aren't beautiful. Maybe they kind of look really ugly, but they work really, really well and people know how to use them. And it's intuitive. Maybe it's not beautiful, but it's very intuitive. And that's still okay. That's still solving the problem. And so we recognize that. So when you're designing a solution, think about usability and solving the problem first and foremost. So that is the most important thing that you want to be doing. You want to solve the problem for your user. And if your interface is so not, I don't want to say bad, but so not good that it's hindering that user's ability to solve their problem, like they don't know how to send a message, they don't know how to do this or that. If that's the issue, then that's a little different. So yeah, basically, you should try to design a solution that is really solving the problem for people rather than just making it incredibly beautiful. Although beauty is really, really great in a lot of applications. We've seen that in our own lives. So we're seeing that I think it's time to wrap up. I'm getting some pings to wrap it up. It looks like it's 1 o'clock here in New York. So let's wrap up here. You can continue posting in the chat. If you have more questions, you can post in the chat. You can also post in the in Parthian. If you have questions for me too, add me on LinkedIn. I'd love to meet all of you and talk to all of you. And we will also, we'll look at this chat and we'll follow up with everybody as well. So yeah, you can feel free to continue asking questions on there. And yeah, we appreciate it. Go to the Solution Challenge website, make your submissions. We'd love to see all your projects. Stay safe and have fun. Thank you, everyone.